He's one of the stars of CW's Hart of Dixie. You also remember his work as the famed QB1 on the outstanding Friday Night Lights. Welcome to the Rich Eisen Show, Scott Porter. Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you.
How many people think that you are the quarterback?
You know, I never thought in my career that I would have like a specific line that people would say to me.
Sure.
I saw Jerry Seinfeld in one of those TMZ interviews running down the street, and they're like, "Hey, Jerry, what do people say to you?" He's like, "No soup for you." They say that a lot to me. And I get all the time, because I played a quadriplegic on the show, Jason Street, and I get, "Oh, it's a miracle, you're walking."
No, that's not true.
From everyone, all the time. It is, and everyone thinks that it's the wittiest thing and the only time I've ever heard it. It especially happens in airports, as I'm like rushing from plane to plane, and I'm just like, oh, yeah, and briskly, I can walk briskly.
I was about to say that it would be clear eyes, full heart, can't lose.
That's what you would think.
You would.
That's what you would think.
But instead, oh my gosh, you're walking.
That's what people like to tweet to me, but I think when they see me walking, it's just such a shock if that's the only time they've ever seen me. And then when people see me on Hart of Dixie, they're like, wait a minute. They cannot compute.
They can't figure it out.
Can't figure it out.
Have any NFL quarterbacks come up to you and talked quarterbacking with you because of that show?
I'm a huge football fan.
Yep.
From Nebraska. I'm a Huskers fan. I'm a Broncos fan in the NFL. And this show was the greatest thing for me. It's gotten me to 3 Super Bowls. I played in like the DirecTV flag football game, and you get tickets when you play in that thing. So I've been to 3 Super Bowls. I met Peyton Manning at the ESPYs, and I just got my courage up, and I was like, I'm just gonna walk over to him. It was a year after they beat the Bears in the Super Bowl, and I went over and I said, I just want to say congratulations to you. And he goes, no, hey, congratulations to you. QB1 season 2. And I was like, wait, what? And he was like, yeah. He goes, every Friday night, he would have his O-line and his tight ends over to the house. His wife would make like a spaghetti dinner for them, and they would watch Friday Night Lights. And then I was at the Watchmen premiere, and I saw Roethlisberger, who is a giant man.
He is a giant man. Across
the room. And I looked at him, and I was staring at him, and I was like, that's Roethlisberger. And I turned around, and I told my buddy, I was like, Roethlisberger's over there. And the guy goes, yeah, and he's walking at you. And I was like, oh, did I look funny at him? Did I give him like the ice grill, And he comes over and he shook my hand, told me the same exact story. He would have, his receivers and backs and tight ends over to the house, and they would watch the show together after film. And then met Aaron Rodgers at a charity event, and he calls me over to his table, and I sit down, and we start talking. We became friends. I went to Lambeau this year in his box suite and saw the Packers at Lambeau, which was the first time I'd been there. So, yeah, being on Friday Night Lights, for me as a sports fan, it transcends just doing television. It allows me to go to events I would have never been a part of.
Well, I mean, it was a male soap opera, for the lack of a better phrase. It really was, because, it wasn't just it really wasn't an X's and O's show. It really never was. It was about the relationships amongst the teammates, the relationship between the coach and his wife and his daughter, and some of the things that would happen within the locker room, within the community. I mean, it really touched a lot of things that you would not think a sports show, quote unquote, would be doing.
The interesting thing about the movie, everybody saw the movie and loved the movie, of course, and it's based off of a book, and you're talking a 500+ page book about this small town, and you can't explore in an hour and a half to 2 hours all of the themes that are actually explored in that book. I mean, you're talking race, you're talking small town politics, family, how it differs in the South. I mean, there's a lot of things that they wanted to explore. So Peter Berg, our executive producer, said, if I can do this as an open-ended, 76 episodes we got, so that's 76 hours that he can explore all these actual, real-world themes that they didn't get to touch on in the movie. And so, yeah, it gets a little soapy at points. You got a bunch of young, good-looking folks. And,
well, in that regard, Scott Porter joining me here, Hart of Dixie. You've got a program that the series finale is coming up on March 27th. It could be season finale, could be the series finale. Okay, so in that regard, I also know you're a married man. You got a child on the way. Okay,
yeah.
So I ask you this question as a married man as well: the biggest smoke show, the better smoke show, the Friday Night Lights cast members, Hart of Dixie cast members.
Oh man,
I only ask the tough questions.
You got to go like one-on-one with like.
Yeah, sort of like a
Jamie
tournament
King,
bracket.
Adrian Palicki, you got to go Minka Kelly versus Rachel Bilson.
Yes.
There was, I think, because of volume alone.
Yes.
I think Friday Night Lights has a leg up.
Are you still shooting Hart of Dixie? You have to go
No, he's
back
not.
and see
We-
these.
we-
No pickups.
They're wrapped.
I'm just making sure.
They're wrapped. I'm only asking questions that he's allowed to answer right now.
Making sure.
So you're going to go sheer volume, Friday Night Lights.
Well, because and it was like we had a small cast on Hart of Dixie.
Yes.
The cast on Friday Night Lights is massive, and not
Sprawling.
only did you have a massive cast to start with, then in season 4 it reinvents itself. It brings in a whole new crew
Right.
of young kids and everything. So I think on sheer volume alone, I think Friday Night Lights.
Well, there's no wrong answer. But that said, in my mind, Mink and Kelly cut down the nets a very long time ago. If we were gonna bracket this thing, and with a few brackets I'm allowed to fill out, she cut down the nets a while ago. That's my 2 cents.
Okay.
And we also share a birthday. I'm just saying.
Is it creepy, you know that?
No. Suddenly, I no longer can be within 200 yards of her after saying this sort of thing. Scott Porter is here on the Rich Eisen Show, and we come back. We're going to take your phone calls. The two of us together, they're lit up over the Pete Rose thing. I'm sure you have an opinion on that, being a Broncos, Knicks, Cornhuskers, Hoyas, and Rangers fan that you are.
Yeah.
That's quite the hybrid. Scott Porter is here on the Rich Eisen Show, and your phone calls, if you're holding, we're going to take them at 844-204-RICH when we come back in 1 minute's time. Welcome back to the Rich Eisen Show. You can follow my guest on Twitter at Scott Porter, because that's his name. Hart of Dixie, 4th season finale, March 27th on the CW. It's the CW, right? Or is it CW? What is it?
I think it's a brand now, so I think it's the CW.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
It's
I think
like
when you
it's
brand
like,
something, you put a "the" in front of it.
because if you remember the old Sky Dome, it wasn't the Sky Dome. It was just Sky Dome.
Just Sky Dome.
But the Bronx is the Bronx, not Bronx. You know what I mean? So it's the CW.
Yeah.
8 p.m. Eastern, 7 Central, Fridays on the CW. You have a take on Pete Rose asking for reinstatement, Scott Porter?
Rules are rules, man. Rules are rules. Everybody's up in arms about Josh Gordon just this last year. But the rules are the rules. That's what is in the CBA for the NFL. The drug policy is very strict at this point. And if you break the rules, I mean, you're getting paid millions of dollars. And regardless of what your idea of whether or not legalization of certain drugs should happen, it doesn't matter. The rules are the rules. You can't break them. And, I mean, what Pete Rose did was damaging to the sport. I mean, you're talking about the actual core of wins and losses, of whether or not you have any skin in the game as far as the throw or to make the outcome of games happen a certain way. So
it is the most cardinal rule, to use the lack of a better phrase, certainly when you're talking about a red. You know, I mean, I don't know. I am of the mindset that if he uses this opportunity to go out there and point to himself and tell people in this world whose families are torn asunder by gambling and gambling issues, don't be like me, and try and use this as a platform, why not? That's my 2 cents on this. It's 2015.
The other side of it is
Now.
if the league makes a mistake and they go back and they change rules years later, why can't they give forgiveness? I think Pete Rose has paid his penance at this point.
Okay.
Rules are rules. I think you have to follow them, and this has been a very painful journey for him. But, you know, I think at some point you've got to just let it go, I think.
How does one become a Bronco, Nick, Cornhusker, Hoya, Ranger fan? Walk me through this, Scott
From
Porter.
Omaha, Nebraska, originally. I'm a Husker football fan through and through.
Okay.
Started watching pro football when I was around 4 years old. Elway was playing for the Broncos, and when you live in Nebraska, you're a Chiefs or a Vikings or a Broncos fan. And I just loved the way that Elway played, and even though they were losing Super Bowls year after year, I was still a huge fan of theirs. But when I learned how to play basketball, I learned how to play on it with a Hoyas basketball.
Okay.
Because the Ewing-led Hoyas were
The Big East.
Oh, man.
Can you imagine what the Big East was back then with Ewing,
Compared to what it is now with
Chris Mullen,
Creighton.
right? I know, right. I mean,
Come on, man.
The players who were playing in the Big East in the 80s?
Oh, nothing could touch it.
I know.
But when Ewing went to the pros, I followed him to the Knicks.
Okay.
So
that's and then the Rangers just go along with that, essentially?
Yeah, I mean, when I was, you know, as far as hockey goes, wanted to be a Blackhawks fan, but, you know, they were based out of Chicago. Didn't really have any ties to Chicago. And I was already watching the Knicks play, and I loved the idea of the New York teams. And didn't really start watching hockey until the early 90s. And Messier went over there.
Messier's the guy? He actually hoisted the
I have
cup?
a shirt that says, "We will win tonight." I mean, you know, that was just the battle cry for me in all my sports endeavors during the 90s when I was like at high school and stuff.
1994?
So, yeah, man. And then as far as baseball, I'm over baseball at this point. I think it's,
again, and that, well, I mean, for somebody of you being such a sports fan to say that, that's exactly what the commissioner of the Major League Baseball should be doing, is to reach people like you and say, you shouldn't be over baseball. It's truly a passion of mine. I love baseball. I love the lyrical aspect of it. I love sitting there and having conversations during the game, and then playoff baseball, when somebody reaches first base, in my mind, my blood pressure goes up. My heart races. And there should be more people like me, I guess, like that. And maybe getting Pete Rose back in the game is something that will attract a lot of fans. Let's go right now to some of the. You want to take some phone calls?
Sure.
All right.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Sean in Texas, you're on with Rich Eisen show. Scott Porter is here as well.
Hey, how y'all doing today?
I'm doing fine.
Yeah, I was calling to say, Pete Rose, paid his dues, man. I mean, the guy did something a long time ago, decades ago, and there's guys out there that do bad stuff in any sport right now, and who are we to say that he should be banned for life whenever he did his time? He should be reinstated and be able to be in the Hall of Fame, man, because the guy was really, really record-setting. He set a lot of records, and he's just one of the greatest players of all time. And I think that we should, as sports fans, we shouldn't be condemning this guy any longer. He paid his dues like going to prison. He did his time. So he should be allowed to be back in the Hall of Fame, or be in the Hall of Fame, I mean.
All right. That's Sean in Texas. Jim in New York City, you're on the Rich Eisen show. Jim?
Hey, guys. Hey, I'm Scott, Rich. I'm fans of both of yours, and it's an honor to speak to both of you.
Thank you.
As far as Pete Rose goes, Rich, before you said you believe the Dowds report, and if you believe that, it said in there, Pete they have no proof they ever bet on against the Reds. And he bet on all Red games the same exact amount. Maybe not for other games, but for all the Red games. So I don't think he ever bet against his team. And if you murder someone, eventually you get out of jail and you get a second chance. I think Pete served his time. 25 years is a long time. And people don't play the game the way he used to play that game. He played it so special, and he gave everything he had. And when he went to the Phillies, he showed him how to win. I think we need someone like that back in baseball. I think it would help baseball.
All right, Jim. Thanks very much.
I just have one comment on that.
Sure.
Say you didn't bet on Reds game. Any sport, any players in a sport at any given time, that's a fraternity. It's a very tight fraternity. And all you need is one domino to fall for other people to start following suit, for that influence to go anywhere around. I mean, it didn't, but what if Pete Rose wasn't betting on Reds games, but had a guy who was, a good friend of his who
just
was
laying it out there,
playing for the Mets at the time and going, hey, by the way,
Well, again, a manager betting on his own games there couldn't be anything more damaging. I mean, that is one way to send a sport down the tubes.
Yeah. So I think the punishment fit the crime, but I think, like he said,
it has been some time.
It's been some time. I think you got to kind of go back.
We have yet to get somebody calling into this show saying that Pete shouldn't be allowed back in.
Yeah.
Let's take one more call. Richard in Williamsburg, Pennsylvania, the home of Little League Baseball, calling into the Rich Eisen show. Richard?
Hey, Rich. I think that Pete Rose should be reinstated because I think Archie might have got it wrong many years ago. He made his decision based on the idea that there was an historic connection about gambling and the need to get gambling out of the sport. But that completely missed the boat because the Black Sox took money to throw a game, to throw the World Series. That's profoundly different than just simply putting money on a game where there could be the possibility that the player does that and then decides to throw the game. But those guys weren't betting on the game. Those guys were taking money to throw a game. To equate what Pete Rose did with them is ridiculous, and to have the punishment be identical is ludicrous. He's basically had a suspension at this point for more than 2 decades. The punishment seems to fit the crime. Reinstate him, put him in the Hall of Fame. That's where he belongs.
Thank you for calling, Richard. First, my apologies to the good people of Williamsport, Pennsylvania. That's where the Little League World Series is, not Williamsburg. And I mean, Bob Costas did say last week that he thought that he could see the new commissioner appointing an independent commission to look at Joe Jackson's violation from back in the day. That if you saw 8 men out, really never occurred. He never took the money, just put an X down without even being able to sign his own name. To put himself in with the people who actually took money.
Irregardless of numbers, it's a part of the history, it's a part of the story, and the part of the fabric of the game. And having him not be in the Hall of Fame almost makes it a bigger conversation piece than just putting him in.
Well, and then maybe that's a way to, what you're talking about is just put him in, let's end this. But when you put him in, he does it in a way that he calls attention to what he did and gives the ultimate 100% mea culpa about it. and then we move forward.
Well, I mean, so for so many years, there was the stubbornness to admit that it had happened.
Exactly.
And I think
It's time to end that.
Those years of just out and out lying and not admitting really cost him.
But it is time, maybe, if it's done right, for this whole thing to end. The question is what will the new commissioner do with all that? Scott, thanks for coming in, man.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You bet. The series, Hart of Dixie, the season finale, number 4 on The CW, Friday, March 27th at 8 p.m. Please come back whenever you want, okay?
Well, we got to go do karaoke again. See, there's this thing, is the Madden Bowl, we went out that night.
Yes, we did.
And I had done a song, and you came up to me and said, hey, I'm gonna blow your socks off.
Yeah.
And then the music for New York, New York started, and it was some other guy singing it.
Some
and you
dude
got
came
really upset. You ripped your jacket off.
I did.
You went up, you took a microphone out of his hand, and then gave this amazing rendition of New York, New York.
Well,
So
hold on
I
a
think
second.
We're gonna have to
cut the music for a second.
Hold on,
Hold on a minute. I did not rip the microphone out.
No.
You were there, Law. He ripped the microphone from my hand, and I walked off the stage and let him go because he was a gentleman of about advancing years, late 60s, early 70s, who went up.
I may have video of this on my phone. But
I did not take. This is revisionist history. I did not take the microphone from anybody's hand. And Steve Hutchinson was there that night.
Hutch was there.
We can call
Ponder
him to
was
confirm
there.
this.
Ponder was there.
Ponder was there.
Yes.
Steele,
And Sam
Yeah.
Sam Ponder, she's a reporter of the highest order. She would confirm. Somebody did come up. I didn't take it out of his hand.
It was amazing. It was just
we'll go
amazing.
back
It's
up
the,
there.
it's the thing that can only happen in karaoke, though, is that New York, New York comes
True.
on, and two people have put the song in, and then it becomes this, ding, ding, ding.
Yes.
They put ropes up on the stage and just kind of let you guys duke it out.
Correct. Now, what I did was, I believe, if I do recall this correctly, I walked off the stage, let him do it, then went back up and did my own version and crushed his soul with how good mine was. I believe that is what happened.
Things were a little hazy for me that night.
They were for Law, too, which is
I had caught a touchdown pass that day from Dan Marino.
It doesn't get much better
just
than
add
that.
it to the list of flag football game victories for me. Sacked Troy Aikman, caught a touchdown pass from Dan Marino, and then went out drinking that night. So you know what, my thoughts and memories might be a little hazy.
What is that?
This is you singing.
Come on. How good is this? People are going nuts. I've been up and down and over and out. I know one thing. That news that you're saying that I took somebody's microphone is something that should not be spread.
Oh, it's a beautiful story, though.
Don't spread that news.
It's a beautiful story.
Speaking of news, Rich, that pales in comparison to some breaking news that we have from the National Football League.
We're teasing. We're saying goodbye to Scott Porter. And I'm telling you, man, I could kill this.
I sang it with you
I
at
could
NFL
crush
party.
this tune.
Rich does
and
a great
drop the
job.
mic. Thanks for being here, brother.
Hey, man. Thanks
That's
for having
Scott
me.
Porter.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.